What if every person you ever loved was an actor, and your entire life, from birth, was nothing but a show? Somewhere on a soundstage larger than any city, one man has been living inside a lie so perfect he never once thought to question it. Welcome to Beyond the Plot, where unforgettable stories come to life. Today we're exploring the modern classic, The Truman Show.
Yeah, and it's a premise that feels engineered to trigger our deepest existential anxieties.
Oh, absolutely.
But the true horror of this story, it isn't really the science fiction of a giant dome. It's how accurately it mirrors the architecture of our own reality. The more you analyze the mechanisms keeping this guy trapped, the more you realize it's basically a documentary about the invisible cages we all live in today.
Right, and that is exactly what we're going to unpack today in this deep dive. Because we aren't just here to retell a movie, we're embarking on a journey into a fabricated world that functions as a terrifyingly accurate blueprint for modern surveillance capitalism, societal control, and algorithmic manipulation.
Yeah, it really does.
So for you listening, we've pulled together a mountain of sources, sociological breakdowns and psychological analyses, and we're using the story of Truman Burbank as a lens to understand how our own realities are constructed for us.
Yeah, and to really dig into that, we have to establish the philosophical stakes first. Because this story, it hinges on a sociological concept called the habitus.
The habitus?
Yeah, it was coined by the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. Basically, the habitus is this invisible web of unsaid rules, the cultural norms and learned behaviors that just keep a society functioning smoothly.
Like the water we swim in.
Exactly. It's the water we swim in, and most of us never even notice the water. So this story asks the fundamental question, what happens when one man dares to actually see the water and then tries to break out of the tank?
Right. Well, let's start with the tank itself and the man inside it, Truman Burbank, because the context of his existence is, it's deeply unsettling when you strip away that idyllic suburban veneer.
Super dark.
It really is. I mean, he was a child abandoned at birth, but he wasn't adopted by a family. He was legally adopted by a corporation.
Yeah, the first in history.
Exactly. And he's raised in Seahaven Island, which is a town so perfectly manicured it borders on the grotesque. And he's completely unaware that he is the unwitting star of a global reality television phenomenon.
Seahaven is just this masterpiece of environmental and psychological deception. I mean, it's an unimaginably large physical set enclosed within a massive dome. But the physical dome it's really secondary to the psychological one.
Yeah, because presiding over all of this is the show's creator, Christoph. And he operates with a level of control that can only be described as godlike.
Literally.
Right, he doesn't just direct the actors, he directs the cosmos of Seahaven. He controls the weather. He dictates the day and night cycle. I mean, he literally controls the stars in the sky. He's engineered every breeze and every drop of rain just to keep Truman completely docile.
And this totalizing control requires, an unprecedented level of surveillance. Truman's entire life is funded by product placement, which means his existence is entirely commodified.
Down to the last detail.
Yeah. There are hidden cameras in his car, on his street, and most disturbingly, behind his bathroom mirror.
Oh, man, that bathroom mirror scene is a perfect anchor point for this. We see Truman just standing there doing what any of us do when we think we're entirely alone.
Right, making goofy faces.
Yeah, he's pretending to be a rugged explorer, just playing around in what should be his most private sanctuary. And the camera angle makes it violently clear that millions of people are watching him.
It feels like such an invasion of privacy.
It really does. But I have to stop and challenge the logistics of this for a second, because this is where the premise usually loses people who think about it too literally, right? How does a fake world hold up to human scrutiny for 30 years?
That's the big question.
Like, if you put a bug in a terrarium and place every leaf perfectly, the bug won't know. But Truman is a human being with a highly developed prefrontal cortex. Are you telling me a whole society can just forget they are acting for 3 decades without a single person breaking character out of guilt?
Well, it's a totally fair question. And it's where we have to deeply understand Bourdieu's concept of the habitus that we mentioned earlier. You're right to point out that humans are complex, but we are also deeply biologically wired to conform to our social environment.
Okay, so it's about conformity.
Yeah. The habitus isn't just about conscious rules. It's about bodily and psychological conditioning. Think about returning a shopping cart at the supermarket.
Oh, that's a great example.
Right. There's no law forcing you to do it. There's no financial reward. Yet the vast majority of people do it. Why?
Well, because if no one does it, the parking lot becomes a disaster area. And, society subtly shames you if you just leave it in the middle of a parking space. It's an unspoken social contract.
Exactly. It's a learned expectation that is vital to the supermarket's ecosystem. The habitus is ingrained in us by our families, our education, our peers, until it becomes completely invisible. We mistake cultural constructs for natural laws.
Wow.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, so in Seahaven, the actors are paid to maintain a highly specific artificial habitus, but they're also compartmentalized. Christoph has likely structured the production so that the actors view this not as a horrific psychological experiment, but as a prestigious job.
They rationalize their complicity.
Exactly. But Truman is entirely conditioned by this environment. Christoph's true genius isn't that he builds the physical walls of the prison perfectly. It's that he has built the prison inside Truman's mind. Truman has been taught exactly what to value, what to fear, and what constitutes a normal life.
It's like he's been given a map of the world, and the map just ends at the borders of his town. He's been told there's nothing but dragons beyond it, so it never even occurs to him to go looking.
Right. Why look for an exit if you don't know you're in a room? Exactly. But that perfectly calibrated machine fundamentally misunderstands one thing: entropy.
Oh, yeah.
No closed system can remain perfect forever. Things degrade. Glitches happen.
The inevitable cracks in the dome.
Right, the cracks. Let's look at how the system handles those cracks. Because Truman is going about an ordinary morning, leaving for work, and out of nowhere, a massive, heavy stage light plummets from the sky and shatters on the asphalt right in front of his house.
It's such a surreal moment.
It's a physical impossibility in a real world. He walks over, inspects the wreckage, and reads a label on the side that says, "Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky." A piece of the fake heavens literally fell to Earth.
And in any normal scenario, this would be a reality-shattering event. The heavens are exposed as lighting rigs. But pay attention to how the system's immune response operates. It doesn't just ignore the glitch. It aggressively contextualizes it.
It patches the hole because Truman gets in his car, visibly shaken, and turns on the radio. And almost instantly, a news flash interrupts the broadcast. The announcer smoothly reports that a light aircraft in trouble began shedding parts as it flew over Seahaven.
It's so smooth.
It really is. It's a perfectly logical, objective-sounding explanation injected directly into his reality to neutralize the anomaly.
And this is a crucial mechanism of control. The radio broadcast doesn't stop at merely explaining away the falling light. It immediately pivots to discussing the inherent dangers of flying.
Oh, right.
It takes a moment of potential awakening. A moment where Truman might question the sky itself and weaponizes it to reinforce a pre-existing narrative of fear. It patches the hole in the habitus by using anxiety as a sealant.
Anxiety as a sealant, that is such a vivid way to put it. And the glitches, they just keep compounding. Later, Truman's car radio malfunctions and picks up a production frequency.
That part always gets me.
Yeah. He hears a voice narrating his exact movements in real time as he drives through Lancaster Square. He's turning left, he's turning right. The invisible observers are suddenly audible.
Terrifying.
But to understand why Truman didn't just pack a bag and run the first time he saw something weird, we have to talk about how deeply that anxiety sealant was applied in his formative years.
Yeah, we have to talk about the stage drowning.
Right. When Truman was a young boy, Christoph orchestrated this deeply traumatic event. Truman was out on a small boat with his father. A sudden storm hits, manufactured by the production, of course.
Naturally.
And his father is thrown overboard and seemingly drowns. Truman is forced to watch his father die, believing it to be real, believing it to be his own fault for wanting to stay out on the water.
The psychological violence of this cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Seahaven is an island. The only way out is across the water. By engineering this trauma, Christoph deliberately instills a paralyzing clinical aquaphobia in Truman.
He builds a prison wall out of childhood trauma.
Yes. It's infinitely more effective than a physical wall because Truman will police himself. He will actively avoid the perimeter of his own cage.
And the production actively tests this conditioning, too, to make sure the invisible cage is still locked tight. There's a moment where Truman's boss asks him to handle a client on an adjacent island.
Oh, that scene is so cruel.
It is. It requires a short ferry ride. And the boss knows exactly what he's doing. He is forcing Truman to confront the water to ensure the phobia still holds. Truman tries to step onto the dock, but his body physically rebels. He's terrified. He retreats. The trauma is still fully operational.
If we look at the neurological mechanics of this, trauma fundamentally rewires the amygdala. That's the brain's threat detection center. Truman isn't making a logical choice to avoid the water. His nervous system is engaging in a fight-or-flight response to a perceived mortal threat.
So his body is reacting before his brain even can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christoph isn't just a television producer. He is an architect of learned helplessness. And he reinforces this neurological wiring with a constant barrage of ambient propaganda. The radio warns of plane crashes. Television shows highlight the safety of staying home. Every piece of media Truman consumes is carefully curated to validate his fears and keep him stationary.
Now, think about how that translates to our own lives. We aren't living in a literal dome, but look at the architecture of our digital spaces.
Oh, the parallels are wild.
Right. We are subjected to a 24-hour news cycle and algorithmic feeds that prioritize fear, outrage, and threat detection above all else because fear drives engagement. We're constantly fed narratives about why the outside world is dangerous, why the other side is a threat to our existence, and why it's safer to just stay in our designated ideological lane and keep consuming. The mechanisms of Seahaven are the exact same mechanisms driving our modern attention economy.
The source material actually makes a direct connection here. The habitus of fear encourages us to ignore the constructed nature of our reality. We are molded into willing participants in a system of perpetual anxiety. And the truly insidious part is how this conditioning turns the victims into accomplices.
Accomplices, wow.
Yeah, because once people internalize the fear, they become the ones who perpetuate the societal delusion. They enforce the norms.
Which brings us perfectly to the people in Truman's life and the complete lack of authenticity in his world. Because fear might keep him on the island, but human beings also need connection. They need meaning. And Truman is starting to realize that the people closest to him are entirely hollow. Let's talk about his wife, Meryl.
Meryl is a deeply disturbing character study. She really represents the absolute corporatization of the human soul.
She really does. Truman is experiencing profound existential dread. His reality is fracturing. He tries to talk to his wife about these terrifying glitches. And how does she respond? She completely ignores his emotional state and essentially cuts to a commercial.
It's so jarring.
She'll hold up a kitchen gadget, angle it perfectly toward a hidden camera Truman can't see, and brightly announce, "It's a dicer, grater, peeler all-in-one, never needs sharpening, dishwasher safe." She is constantly name-dropping brands and staging these bizarre domestic advertisements in the middle of his psychological breakdowns.
What's terrifying about Meryl is that she has internalized the demands of the show so completely that she no longer possesses a private self. There is no line between the actor and the brand ambassador. She's a walking billboard.
Yeah, in any genuine human relationship, this behavior would be flagged as deeply psychotic.
Absolutely. But in the habitus of Seahaven, it's just her doing her job. She is prioritizing the commercial viability of the broadcast over the sanity of the human being standing right in front of her.
And this stark plastic emptiness makes the one genuine moment of Truman's life shine that much brighter. We get a flashback to his college years. He has a chance encounter with a background extra. Her character name is Lauren, but her real name is Sylvia.
Yeah, and Sylvia was never cast to be a major part of his life. She was atmospheric background. But the connection between them is immediate, unscripted, and entirely genuine. It's the only authentic human interaction Truman has ever had.
They steal a few moments away from the other actors, though they obviously can't escape the cameras and run down to the beach. And it's there that Sylvia breaks the ultimate rule. She breaks character.
The ultimate sin in Seahaven.
Right. She looks at him with this desperate, frantic urgency and tells him the truth. Everybody knows everything you do. They're pretending.
It is an act of profound rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And notice how swiftly and brutally the system crushes it. A man materializes out of nowhere, claiming to be her father. He physically drags Sylvia away, gaslighting Truman the entire time.
Yeah, he dismisses her desperate warnings as a schizophrenic break, telling Truman she's unwell and that they are moving to Fiji. Fiji. That becomes Truman's mythical promised land. He never forgets her. And the way he holds on to her memory is just heartbreaking. He secretly buys women's fashion magazines, tears out tiny fragments of faces, the curve of a nose, the shape of an eye, and pieces them together in his basement, trying to reconstruct her face from memory.
It's a really powerful visual metaphor. He is literally trying to piece together a singular truth out of a mountain of manufactured glossy lies. Sylvia represents authenticity in a world devoid of it.
Let me try to ground this in an analogy, because sometimes people ask, Why does he obsess over a 5-minute interaction from college while dismissing a decade of marriage with Meryl?
Right, that's a common question.
Imagine you spent your entire life in a room where the only music you've ever been allowed to hear is heavily auto-tuned, artificially generated elevator music. It's perfectly in tune, it's relentlessly cheerful, but it is entirely devoid of soul. And then one day, the door opens for just 5 seconds, and you hear someone play a single, imperfect acoustic note on a real cello. Even if they slam the door shut and pump the elevator music back in for another 10 years, you are going to spend the rest of your life trying to remember the texture of that real note.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You will never accept the artificial music as real again because you have finally felt the resonance of authenticity.
That captures it perfectly. Truman's subconscious recognizes the resonance of that acoustic note, even if his conscious mind is still struggling to understand the walls of his room. Meryl is the auto-tuned elevator music. And this dynamic is where the source material draws some of its most chilling parallels to our modern era.
Right, the predictions the movie made.
Yeah, the Truman Show predicted the psychological devastation of the reality TV and social media landscape with uncanny accuracy.
The numbers in the research are just staggering. The source highlights a specific, deeply troubling statistic. 14-year-old girls who spend over 5 hours a day on social media experience a 50% spike in symptoms of depression. 50%. That isn't just a slight negative correlation. That is a public health crisis engineered by a digital habitus.
And we have to ask why that spike occurs. It happens because social media forces us into a hyper-curated panopticon. These young women, and frankly all of us, are constantly comparing our messy, complex, unscripted behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's flawlessly lit, heavily edited highlight reel.
It's all fake.
We are holding our authentic lives up against a completely fabricated standard. Meryl is the ultimate predecessor to the modern influencer. She projects a life of sterile perfection that is utterly unattainable because it isn't real.
And the tragedy is that the system forces the users to perpetuate the cycle. You feel inadequate looking at the curated lives of others, so you apply a filter to your own life. You curate your own feed to compete, which only adds to the collective delusion. We become both the prisoners and the wardens of our own Seahaven. We willingly commodify our personal lives for the validation of an invisible audience.
Yeah, and when you live entirely for the perception of the audience, the private self atrophies. Meryl has no private self. And Truman, sensing this absolute void of humanity in his own home, finally transitions from passive confusion to active, deliberate investigation. He starts testing the boundaries of his cage.
The catalyst for this is a moment of pure surreal horror. Truman is walking down the street and he spots a homeless man. He looks closer and his blood just runs cold. It's his father.
The ghost.
The man he watched drown 20 years ago is standing right in front of him in a trench coat.
It's a catastrophic failure of the production's compartmentalization, and actors sneak back onto the set.
But before Truman can even speak to him, the environment violently reacts. Extras immediately swarm the street. A bus screeches to a halt, blocking Truman's view, and the father is physically manhandled onto the bus, which just speeds away. Truman is left standing on the sidewalk, his reality completely shattered.
And then he goes to his mom.
Right. He goes to his mother, trying to process this impossible event, and she instantly deploys the system's primary defense mechanism, gaslighting. She calmly tells him he's imagining things, that his lingering grief is causing hallucinations.
But the gaslighting has lost its efficacy. Once the acoustic note has been heard, the static is unbearable. Truman begins actively hunting for the cracks.
He takes a magnifying glass to his wedding photos. He looks closely at Meryl, and he sees it. She has her fingers crossed. Captured forever in the photograph of their supposedly sacred union, she is making a childish symbol to negate her vows.
That is the proof he needs.
Exactly. So he decides to follow her. He tends her to the hospital where she works as a surgical nurse. He pushes past the background extras who suddenly materialize in the hallways, trying to impede his progress, and he bursts through the doors of an operating room.
The scene inside that operating room is a brilliant piece of dark comedy and psychological terror, honestly.
It really is. He bursts in, and there is a quote-unquote surgery happening. But the moment he enters, the entire room freezes. The doctors and nurses are holding surgical instruments like they are alien artifacts. They clearly have zero medical training.
None at all.
The patient on the table is just lying there, and the entire cast is caught in this deer-in-the-headlights panic. They don't have a script for this. Truman's deepest fears are validated. It's all a stage play.
This is where we witness the friction of an individual actively rejecting the societal habitus. When Truman attempts to assert his free will and leave the designated path, The entire infrastructure of Seahaven mobilizes to stop him. The habitus relies entirely on compliance. When a variable goes rogue, the actors malfunction.
Right, so he goes to the travel agency to book a flight to Fiji. He walks in, and the walls are plastered with aggressively terrifying posters of airplanes being struck by lightning. He ignores them and asks for a ticket.
Good for him.
The travel agent, clearly terrified and waiting for instructions in her earpiece, fumbles with her keyboard and tells him there isn't a single flight available for a month. A whole month.
So convenient.
Right, so he pivots. He goes to the bus station and boards a bus out of town. He sits down, waiting. The driver, who is an actor and clearly does not possess a commercial driver's license, grinds the gears so violently that the engine conveniently breaks down right there in the depot. Everyone is forced to disembark.
Every institutional avenue of escape is systematically blocked. The travel agency and the transit system are arms of the control apparatus.
Yeah.
So Truman realizes that to beat a scripted system, he must become entirely unscripted. He must become unpredictable.
Which leads to the climax of his paranoia, which is just an absolute masterclass in testing the limits of a simulated reality. Truman is in his car. Meryl gets in. He locks the doors, revs the engine, and takes her on a completely impromptu road trip. And the system's response is incredibly revealing. As soon as he turns a corner, heading toward the edge of town, bam, instant traffic jam. Hundreds of cars materialize out of nowhere to block the road.
Out of nowhere.
Meryl tries to play it off, saying, "Oh, looks like we're stuck." But Truman doesn't get angry. He smiles. He throws the car in reverse, spins around, and heads back toward the center of town. And the moment he does down to miss, the streets are completely deserted. The massive traffic jam vanished in 10 seconds.
He is stress testing the algorithm. Christoph is desperately deploying assets to contain him, but Truman is moving too erratically for the simulation to render the obstacles smoothly.
They speed toward the bridge that leads off the island. Meryl is screaming at him to stop. Truman, knowing his own psychological limits, closes his eyes and stomps on the gas, physically forcing Meryl to grab the wheel and steer them over the water.
That is so smart.
He uses her self-preservation instinct to conquer his own engineered phobia. They cross the bridge. But the system escalates. Christoph triggers a staged forest fire. A literal wall of flames erupts across the road. Truman doesn't even blink. He drives straight through the fire.
He's fully committed.
Finally, they reach the ultimate perimeter defense. An emergency roadblock, sirens, flashing lights, and a sign warning of a nuclear leak. Men in full hazmat suits surround the car. Truman leaps out, tries to sprint into the forest, and these actors physically tackle him to the ground, restraining him by force.
It's a terrifying sequence because it drops the polite veneer of the habitus and reveals the sheer, overwhelming physical force the system will deploy to maintain the status quo when psychological conditioning fails. And the source material explicitly connects this sequence to our own societal mechanisms.
How so?
Well, we have to ask how many quote-unquote emergency events, dominant political narratives, or algorithmic outrage cycles in our own feeds are designed specifically to keep us paralyzed on a designated path.
Wow, think about it. Think about the times you felt a genuine desire to disconnect, to step away from the endless digital churn, to change your habits. And the moment you try, your phone serves you a notification about a breaking crisis or a highly volatile political argument or an emergency that demands your immediate attention and emotional investment. The algorithm detects your exit velocity and throws a digital traffic jam in your way to pull you back into the feed.
The source offers a very sharp, impartial observation about the macro-level effects of this dynamic. It notes that as our own real-world institutions begin to crack, as economic disparities widen and political systems falter, the public begins to see the glitches in our own habitus. We start seeing the boom mics dipping into the frame.
And what happens then?
The societal reaction is profound. The source points out we see a surge in systemic distrust. We see the rise of political outsiders and extremism as people frantically search for authenticity outside the established script. But simultaneously, we see a massive wave of apathy. Millions of people realize the game is rigged, the surgery is fake, and the bus is never going to leave the station, so they simply stop playing, they retreat, they check out.
It's a terrifyingly accurate diagnosis. When the habitus is exposed as a cage, chaos ensues. And back in Seahaven, the domestic habitus is completely imploding. Truman is dragged back to his house by the hazmat team, and the scene that unfolds in his kitchen is pure psychological horror.
The polite suburban facade is entirely gone. Truman is pacing like a caged animal. He is unhinged. and rightfully so.
He is demanding answers, pushing Meryl to explain what is happening. And Meryl has no script for an existential crisis. The habitus is broken down, and she is completely unable to cope with an unscripted reality. So in the middle of her husband's absolute psychological meltdown, she defaults to her core programming. Yes, she grabs a jar from the counter, forces a manic smile, and delivers a bright, robotic product placement for a new brand of cocoa. It is grotesque. It's so wildly inappropriate that it finally breaks Truman. He snaps. He screams at her, demanding to know who she is talking to. And the actor playing Meryl breaks character. She is genuinely terrified of this unpredictable, desperate man. She grabs a sharpened kitchen tool, the very dicer grater she was selling a few scenes ago, and holds it out as a weapon to defend herself against the man she has pretended to love for years.
It is the violent shattering of the domestic illusion.
Yeah.
Christoph, watching from the control room, sees that the marriage storyline is completely unsalvageable, and more importantly, that Truman is dangerously unstable. He needs to de-escalate the situation immediately, so he deploys his most potent weapon. He sends in Marlon, the lifelong best friend.
Right. Marlon bursts through the door, diffuses the standoff with Meryl, and gets Truman out of the house. They end up sitting on a bridge over the river at night, sharing a six-pack, having this deep, seemingly profound heart-to-heart. Truman is raw, vulnerable, trying to explain that the whole world feels like it revolves around him.
And Marlon listens so well.
He does. He listens, projecting deep empathy. He talks about their childhood, about trust, about the meaning of their shared history. He looks Truman dead in the eye and delivers this incredibly comforting assurance. He says that if everyone in the world was in on some massive conspiracy, then he, Marlon, would have to be in on it too. And he swears, with tears welling up in his eyes, that he would never lie to Truman.
And here's the single most devastating detail of the entire narrative. As Marlon is delivering this beautiful, heartfelt speech about loyalty and truth, the camera cuts to the control room. We see Christoph sitting at a soundboard, speaking those exact words into a microphone. "I would never lie to you, Truman." The words are being fed directly into a hidden earpiece in Marlon's ear. Marlon isn't comforting his friend. He is just repeating Christoph's script, word for word, crying on cue.
I want to pause and really sit with the psychological violence of that betrayal. I mean, it is one thing to know that institutions lie. It's one thing to realize the government or the media or corporations are manipulating the truth for profit. We all suspect that to some degree. But to look into the eyes of the person you trust most in the universe, your absolute anchor in reality, and realize they're nothing but a fleshy, biological speaker for your captor, that they are weaponizing your shared childhood memories to keep you locked in a cage.
It is the ultimate violation of the human spirit. Christoph understands that physical barriers like traffic jams and fires are temporary fixes. He needs emotional chains. The show entirely relies on Truman's emotional buy-in. If Truman remains angry, he will eventually break out and the society will collapse. So Christoph uses the most sacred, authentic thing Truman has left, his friendship, to pacify him. He uses intimacy as an anesthetic to numb Truman's deserved outrage.
And on the surface, the anesthetic appears to work. The tension deflates. Truman seems to accept Marlon's words. He hugs his friend. But as they embrace, Truman does something incredible. He deliberately positions his hand where Marlon can see it, and he crosses his fingers.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Just like Meryl did in the wedding photo, it is a silent, brilliant declaration. Truman knows. He knows the friendship is a lie. He knows his best friend is a fake.
This moment provides a profound commentary on parasocial relationships and the pacification of society. The source connects this directly to how modern culture processes outrage. The world is full of profound injustice, systemic failures, and existential threats that absolutely deserve our sustained, furious outrage. But the modern habitus functions like Marlon.
It pacifies us.
It shrinks everything down. It commodifies dissent. It takes our revolutionary impulses and turns them into a trending hashtag, or a t-shirt slogan, or a serialized debate on a cable news panel. It tells us, we hear you, we understand, everything is fine, just keep watching, keep buying. It is a mechanism designed to reduce us to a bored, flaccid, apathetic state.
But Truman refuses the anesthetic. He realizes that to escape, he can't fight the system head-on. He has to outplay it. The next morning, he pretends the programming work. He greets his neighbors with his classic, cheerful catchphrase. He goes to work, seems perfectly content. Evening rolls around, the lights go down, and he goes to sleep in his basement, right on schedule.
But Christoph has the instinct of a predator watching its prey. He senses an imperceptible shift in the routine. He senses that the compliance is an act. He sends Marlon to check on the basement.
Marlon goes down, calls Truman's name, gets no response. He walks over to the bed, pulls back the blanket, and finds a dummy made of clothes and a bar of soap with a tape recorder softly playing snoring sounds. Truman is gone. He has literally vanished into the night, right under the noses of thousands of hidden cameras.
The reaction in the control room is pure panic. The omniscient surveillance state has lost its subject. For the first time in 30 years, Christoph is forced to cut the live television transmission. The screen goes black. The audience, billions of people around the world, are left staring at a test pattern.
And Christoph, desperate, takes an action that shatters the illusion of the world entirely. He orders his technicians to turn the sun on, literally. In the middle of the night, they power up the massive artificial sun, instantly turning night into day across Seahaven.
Which brings us to the ultimate confrontation. The actors are frantically scouring the streets and the forests, but Truman isn't on land. Operating on a hunch, Christoph checks the cameras near the harbor, and there he is. Truman has conquered his deeply engineered traumatic fear of the water. He has commandeered a small sailboat and is braving the open sea, sailing relentlessly toward the edge of his known world.
The broadcast is resumed. Billions of people are glued to their screens watching this man make a break for freedom, and Christoph is faced with a terrifying dilemma. He cannot allow Truman to reach the physical edge of the set. He cannot allow the illusion to be shattered on live television. So, sitting in his control room high above the dome, Christoph unleashes a violent artificial storm. Wind machines roar to life. Wave machines churn the harbor into towering mountains of water. Lightning flashes. He is attempting to capsize the boat, to terrify Truman into turning back, or perhaps even to drown him if he refuses to comply.
Christoph's fury in this moment is practically biblical. He is a wrathful creator, punishing his creation for daring to eat from the tree of knowledge. He's demanding submission.
The storm is brutal. The boat is being tossed around like a toy. Truman is battered by wind and water, tying himself to the mast with a rope so he isn't swept away. And then he commits the ultimate act of defiance. He looks up at the raging, fake heavens, water pouring down his face, and he screams at the sky, "Is this the best you got? You're going to have to kill me."
It is the triumph of the human spirit over the habitus. Truman is stating unequivocally that he would rather die in pursuit of the truth than live another second inside a comfortable lie. And Christoph, faced with this absolute resolve, hesitates. His own crew begs him to stop, horrified that they are about to murder a man on live television. Reluctantly, Christoph cuts the storm. The wind dies. The wave machines power down. The water turns back into a perfectly smooth sheet of glass. Truman has won the battle of wills.
The boat sails forward in absolute silence. The artificial sun is shining. And then the most profound, jarring moment occurs. The bow of Truman's small boat silently glides forward and suddenly, crash. The tip of the boat pierces a solid wall, a wall painted to look exactly like the blue sky and fluffy white clouds. The physical boundary of his reality has been breached. The sky is a canvas.
It is a devastating, beautiful visual metaphor. He reaches out and touches the sky, and it's just painted fiberglass. It is the physical embodiment of his entire limited paradigm, suddenly rendered solid and finite.
Truman steps out of the boat. He finds a hidden ramp just under the water's surface, and he literally walks on water along the edge of the dome. He finds a small staircase built into the sky wall. He ascends the stairs, climbing higher and higher until he reaches a door painted seamlessly into the clouds. The sign above it simply says "Exit." He reaches for the handle.
And this is where Christoph makes his final, desperate play for control. A booming, omnipotent voice thunders down from the sky. Christoph speaks directly to Truman for the first time in his life, breaking the fourth wall of the universe.
He reveals everything. He tells Truman he is the star of a show, watched by millions. And Christoph tries one last grand psychological manipulation. He doesn't threaten Truman, he tempts him. He tells Truman that the real world outside that door is sick, it is dangerous, deceitful, and full of pain. He says, "I have given you the chance to lead a normal life. The world, the place you live in, is the sick place. Seahaven is the way the world should be." He is offering the ultimate temptation, retreat back into the comfortable lie where you are perfectly safe, entirely provided for, and universally adored. He is arguing that ignorance is bliss.
What's vital to understand here is that Christoph is a deeply complex figure. He is a tyrant, undeniably. But in his own twisted, narcissistic way, he genuinely believes he has created a utopia. He believes he is acting as a savior, protecting Truman from the suffering of a sick reality. He blurs the line between absolute, fascistic control and a deeply twisted form of paternal care. He fundamentally believes that the safety of the cage is superior to the freedom of the sky.
But Truman knows the difference between a cage and the sky now. He stands at that door, looking out into the total, terrifying blackness of the real world beyond the soundstage. He reflects on everything he has endured. He turns around, looks directly into the camera lens, and offers a gentle smile. And he uses his own cheerful, programmed, meaningless catchphrase as the ultimate kiss-off to his creator. He says, "In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night." He turns his back on the sterile, perfect reality. He steps through the door into the dark, messy, unpredictable unknown, and he is gone.
It remains one of the most powerful moments of liberation ever committed to film. It is the absolute rejection of a curated, perfectly safe existence in favor of the painful, unscripted, authentic truth. Freedom is terrifying because it demands responsibility, but it's the only thing that is real.
And as we synthesize all of this, the reason this story hits so hard today is because it is vastly more than a clever satire of 1990s television.
Precisely. The Truman Show is a profound allegory for the immense courage required to question the only reality you have ever known. And today, as corporate entities spend billions of dollars constructing digital metaverses, as algorithms curate our realities to keep us docile, and as artificial intelligence threatens to blur the lines between reality and simulation even further, we are all facing the exact same choice Truman faced on those stairs. We are constantly offered a comfortable, curated lie every time we look at a screen.
The walls of our modern Seahaven aren't made of painted canvas and steel. They are constructed out of algorithms, social expectations, and the powerful narcotic lure of convenience. The habitus has gone digital and is actively trying to put us to sleep. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. Think about your own life. Think about the routines, the feeds, and the narratives you accept without question. If you suddenly found the staircase to the edge of your own curated reality, if you stood at the door marked exit, knowing that the messy, painful, unscripted truth was waiting on the other side, would you have the courage to open the door?
That's the real question.
You've been listening to Beyond the Plot. If you enjoyed this journey beyond the illusion, leave a like and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Until next time, go beyond the plot.